home, here, basically private, you can do anywhere. That's kind of the rules. But my cooking classes are, if you see my website or menu at Chef Jamrock, you pick a city, and each city has a menu. So if it's Milan, it's a chicken piccata. If it's Tuscany, it's risotto. So every city has its own kind of menu, and the same with Asian and French. So there's the Paris menu and all those kind of things. I do Julia Child menu and stuff. But I've lived in Hollister for 17 years. And I came here and I opened the Cantina in Tres Pinos for art. And it had a short lifetime. But that's business. He had some problems. But anyways, and then I ended up on the farm. And I worked for Heirloom Organics for Grant for 13 years. And I ran the Ferry Building Farmers Market for him. So until COVID. And COVID just knocked everybody kind of out of a lot of things. I had a private company where I sold edible flowers and all the herbs to all the chefs in San Francisco. So when the COVID thing happened, 3,000 restaurants closed, so my whole private business kind of closed. So I needed to reboot, and I've always been a chef. And the reason I stayed at the Ferry Building, because I sold to all the best chefs in the country and the world. You know, Alice Waters would come every week, all these people. So, I felt like I was in the business still because I sold to chefs or private to restaurants. Being a chef all my life, I started when I was 13. I went to cooking school as trade school. And trade school is something that we really don't have anymore. And there were 20 different trades at the school. And I actually took machine shop because I grew up in Connecticut, and it was General Motors. And all our neighborhood worked at General Motors, and you had to be a mechanic. You had to be, work in the machine shop if you were going to make money. They didn't know the South was coming and every plant was going to move to South Carolina and North Carolina. But I took machine shop, and the third day I was in machine shop, I said, no, I can't take it. I want to go to the kitchen. And there were 25 spots for each trade. And I had started washing dishes at the local country club and met the chefs and stuff. So I went to my guidance counselor and I said, I need to go to the kitchen. I've already got a job washing dishes at my local country club, and I need to go to the kitchen. And they let me in, number 26. And I came out the number 2 student. And the kid that beat me, his parents owned the restaurant. But I was on the Culinary Olympics when I was 16 years old. I've just done competitions and private events all my life. I ended up taking a one-way ticket to LA. Led Zeppelin's Going to California song came true for me. And I bought a one-way ticket and went to LA. Started out in Santa Monica. I ended up on Main Street at the Chronicle. And about 6 months after the Chronicle, fell in love and moved to Palm Springs with a girl. And ended up at Rancho Las Palmas Resort, the Marriott's. I was there for a couple of years there. I cooked for President Reagan and President Bush, or Vice President Bush Sr., and the whole cabinet. And it's a great story. It was about, we had served dessert, and all of the big chefs, I was only 19, or I was still 18. All the big chefs left. The maitre d' comes in and he goes, you two, you got to get aprons on. It was my one superior and then me. I was first cook. And it's like, you got to get cleaned up because they want to meet you. And because none of the other chefs were there. And we were in there for about a half an hour and shook every single person's hand around the table. And I mean, it was a neat thing. And then a few months after that, I cooked for President Ford with Hank Paulson was the host. And this is way before he was ever Treasury Secretary or any of that stuff. But President Ford, the first thing he did when the doorbell rang is he said, who's cooking and I want to go to the kitchen. And throughout the night, they had to come get him 3 times from the kitchen to meet people. But so then I started, consulting and opening restaurants. I ended up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and I did a place up there for a year and a half, and made my way to Nashville, and then Washington, D.C., and I opened restaurants as a consultant because I found out that the lifespan of a chef is about a year, 2 years, unless they're a partner. It's about a year to 2 years before somebody gets frustrated with somebody. It's usually the wife, because the wife thinks that they can do what I do and they take over the restaurant, and then you hear a year later that they're divorced. Because some people can make things look easy. But then Washington, D.C., and this was all before 1990. And then I ended up in Florida. My family's down there. It's the last place I wanted to go, but I went to Boca Raton and did the whole family kind of thing, and did a few, decent, really nice restaurants there. I had my own restaurant in Boca Raton for a year or two, and then I just had to get back to California. So 2003, I made it back to Lake Tahoe, and I remodeled Alpine Meadows. So this was 20 years ago. I redesigned Alpine Meadows, and Aramark ran it forever. And they had to pay Aramark $50,000 a year to run it. So we took over. We made $1.8 million in sales and put $800,000 in the bank. And then I got a huge bonus and laid off. I can't be laid off. So I ended up in Mountain View. My girl's parents lived in Los Gatos, so we said, let's go to the Bay Area. And I met a Japanese gentleman at the coffee shop, and he said, let's walk across the street after the interview. And he handed me the keys to an empty building on Castro Street in Mountain View. It was the bottom of its tall building. And he said, I want a steakhouse here. Here's the keys. I'll see you in 3 months. Yeah. That was a big job. I was their general manager and the chef. I built it, did it, the whole thing for 2 years or so. And my gram got sick, and my family asked me to come home and take care of her in Florida. So I left, and I was back home in Florida for a year until she passed away and stuff. And then they called me back and said, hey, you got to come back. So it was time, and I came back. And then he wanted to sell it, and the gentleman from Chuck E. Cheese and Atari. Anyways, he bought it. Okay, and Nolan Bushnell. Yes. Yeah, Nolan Bushnell. So I met Nolan, and he wanted to buy the restaurant, so I helped facilitate the sale and stuff. And he wanted to put a computer screen on every table and let the people order from their table without a waitress. Well, this is Silicon Valley. The last thing they wanted to see was a screen. So he lasted a year and went and bellied up. So then I ended up working for Epicurean Group, and we did schools. And I ended up in Santa Cruz, Watsonville, and I was at Monte Vista Christian for 1,000 kids, 800 kids, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 150 of them. It was a huge job. And then the dot-com crash, or the 2008 crash. So anybody that made any salary in 2008 was let go, and their younger person came up, no matter what business it was. And that's how I ended up putting a tomato stand in front of my house. And I sold tomatoes for a year, made $100 a week or whatever, And I read the ad for Art, and he said, needed somebody to open this restaurant. And I said, I happen to have 2 acres on Union Road at the Walnut Grove, because my next door neighbor in Aromas, he tilled it. And he said, Dave, you want to farm 2 acres over there? So I said to Art, if I could water my tomatoes during the day, I'll do your restaurant. So I opened a cantina. And that was the full circle. Thank you all for coming today.
So, Dave, tell us what you're doing here,
Yeah, so
and about
here-
your social media and your TV stuff.
Yeah.
Just very briefly.
So here's classes. Here's private dinner, dinner for 2, dinner for 6. I'll take any reservation, doesn't matter. But you pick your menu. I had a schedule, a calendar schedule. But what happened was, and my Facebook is kind of blowing up and stuff. I got a lot of friends and everybody talks and stuff like this. But what happened was, because of all that, everybody looks at the calendar and thinks it's just busy. So every phone call I get, do you got a spot available? And, you know, I don't even have a single reservation yet. You know, so you see that there's a perception of busyness. And, you know, everybody kind of knows in business right now, it's not great right now, you know, and for most people. But yeah, and then any kind of private thing at your home, or, you know, birthday, I do young kids' birthday parties or little girls' princess cupcake party. You know, those are fun kind of things, and team building events. And then This Television called me and wanted me to do a TV show of something that I do. And I'm going to do a TV show. Well, I went to New York and did the pilot. And I got 9,000 views in 7 days. And they said, okay, we want you. And they said that my video was 90 minutes long and it had an 80% retention rate.
That's great.
So they're from New York. So July and August, the East Coast does not work until Labor Day. The school starts after Labor Day, all that. So they said, we're going to talk to you in September, and they want to do a 12-show series, and we're going to film it here.